You're an American. You're a traitor. You work for the CIA and the KGB, for the Vietnamese. You have to tell us the truth. How many people do you have? I didn't work for them. I didn't even know what the CIA was. And then they pull a stick from nearby. Around me there were 5 sticks about this long. They beat until they were satisfied.
You have to conclude that the leadership of the Khmer Rouge were nuts. These people were being accused of being simultaneously KGB, CIA, and Vietnamese spies. It simply wasn't something within the realm of possibility. The overwhelming majority of those who were purged and tortured at Tuol Sleng were innocent of what they were accused of.
In a staff notebook found in the archives, Commander Duch instructed guards on how to question prisoners.
Terrify them. Make them give up hope that they will ever live again or ever be able to survive. Make them think about their family, their wives, their children, and their life.
If prisoners failed to acknowledge their supposed crime, more serious brutality awaited.
In the confession room, there was a telephone. I would call to the head of the office and give them the list of names. I would say, we have been questioning them with no results. Then, the decision to torture was made.
According to Commander Duch, the intention of torture was not to murder.
The purpose of torture is to get their response. It's not something we do for the fun of it. Thus, we must make them hurt so they respond quickly. Another purpose is to break them psychologically and make them lose their will. Thus, we beat them to make them afraid, but absolutely not to kill them.
I put a plastic bag on over the head, and then I sealed it at the neck. Then wait until they cannot breathe anymore and take it off. They would beat them up. It was very painful. When they couldn't stand it anymore, they would confess.
On the 5th day, they began to pull out my toenails. My toenails are all gone. They would use pliers to twist them out. I was unconscious twice. They would pull them out and the blood oozed out.
The most widely used form of torture was electric shock. It was employed so frequently, a set of rules instructing victims how to act while being electrocuted was developed.
Some people would scream, "Anka, help me." They would scream. I would have to close my eyes to torture them, close my eyes to interrogate them. It doesn't matter what we were thinking. I had to do what they ordered me to do. If I don't do it, I will die.
Guilty or not, almost all who were tortured finally yielded to the pain and confessed.
They didn't know at all what was going to happen to them. They didn't know if they performed satisfactorily in the interrogation, whether they'd survive or not. I think many of them thought that if they had a successful interrogation, they could be let go and sent off to a re-education, one of these prisons in the countryside where they'd work and then rehabilitate themselves.
But prisoners would not be re-educated. They would be relocated. For the victims of S-21, the next stop would be their last, a place known today as the killing fields. As the Khmer Rouge continued to cleanse Cambodia in 1978, Pol Pot's grip began to weaken. Border skirmishes with Vietnam, which had begun a year earlier, intensified. Military defections increased. A paranoid Pol Pot initiated a desperate purge of perceived internal enemies. Suspected traitors were brought to S-21.
A lot of military units are up against the border with Vietnam, but lots of military people are coming in, lots of civilians are coming in, people are just swept up from villages that refused to resist the Vietnamese.
It was an implosion of paranoia, an orgy of violence.
Like the victims before them, most new prisoners pled guilty to crimes against Angkar. A forced confession was in effect a sentence of death. Commander Duch doomed prisoners to death without ever using the word kill or execute.
All these persons have been examined by the party, and the party has decided that they are to be smashed. The comrades are asked to implement this policy.
Euphemisms are always brought into play when people kill other people. Smashing enemies was a phrase that was actually drawn from Lenin. I think they took this phrase with amazing literalism. You smashed an enemy by smashing him. You don't smash an enemy by stabbing him or by shooting him. You smash him by smashing him.
Almost all executions took place under the cover of night. Taken from S-21 in trucks, most prisoners were led to believe they had completed their sentences.
They took them out in a line, in shackles, about 15 to 20. Some people couldn't even walk. There was no meat left on their bodies, no muscle. The faces, not human, not the ghosts.
They are told they are being changed from one house to another. They don't want them to scream. They don't want them to know they were being executed.
Prisoners were delivered to a graveyard 15 miles outside of Phnom Penh called Cheng Ek. Upon arrival, prisoner names were checked against an execution list. Him Hoi was one of the many young Cambodians who implemented death sentences by killing his own.
They would write down the names and walk them out of the house, then check the names and ask them to sit near the pit. And then I'd take both hands and hit them. The order was to hit them one time, very hard, with the pole. And then they faint and fall down into the pit, and they cut their throats.
On average, executions took place once every 2 or 3 weeks. The numbers killed on any given day varied from a few dozen to over 600. July 2nd, 1977, 150 children smashed. January 3rd, 1978, 67 smashed. July 1st, 1977, 126 smashed. As 1978 came to a close, the last days of S-21 and the killing fields were near. In December, the Vietnamese army mounted a full-scale invasion of Cambodia. Within weeks, the army closed in on the city of Phnom Penh. At S-21, Doik commanded guards to immediately execute the remaining prisoners in their cells. He then ordered his staff to vacate the prison. As Doik fled in haste, he left behind the thousands of documents and photographs detailing the secrets of S-21.
And he didn't burn them because he wasn't ordered to. If Doik had burned the documents at Tuol Sleng, there would have been very little, if any, hard, indictable evidence for these people who did what they did. And that is why we're able to talk about what happened under the Khmer Rouge.
In the commotion of the S-21 evacuation, Van Nath, Chum May, and 5 other prisoners escaped. After searching for weeks, Van Nath was reunited with his wife.
When I found my wife, I couldn't talk. She didn't even recognize me. I called to her. Then I walked closer to her, about a meter away, and called her name. It was like she awoke from a sleep and she ran and hugged me.
Van Nath's joy quickly faded when he learned his 2 children had died of starvation.
I asked for my children. She couldn't talk. She couldn't say. She thought I was dead, that they had killed me over behind the village. So when she saw me return, she was in shock. I really miss and pity my children.
The Khmer Rouge also robbed Chum May of those closest to him.
My first family is all dead. The baby was on my wife's arm. They took the baby away. I shot my wife.
The Vietnamese victory signaled the end of the Cambodian genocide. Reflecting on the extent of the S-21 slaughter, it is easy to paint all who worked there as evil. The question of the culpability of S-21 staff continues to be hotly debated.
People commit crimes in the act of obeying orders. They're obeying their leaders who are worthy of their respect. If this person is telling us to do something, representing the party which is telling them to do something,